Chapter 11. Sickness in Randolph. We had lived in Randolph but 6 months when I took a heavy cold which caused a severe cough. To relieve this, every possible exertion was made, but it was all in vain. A hectic fever set in which threatened to prove fatal, and the physician pronounced my case to be confirmed consumption. During this sickness, my mother watched over me with much anxiety, sparing herself no pains in administering to my comfort. Yet I continued to grow weaker and weaker until I could scarcely endure even a footfall upon the floor, except in stocking foot, and no one was allowed to speak in the room above a whisper. While I was in this situation, a Methodist exhorter came to see me. On coming to the door, he knocked in his usual manner, and his knocking so agitated me that it was a considerable length of time before my nerves became altogether quieted again. My mother motioned him to a chair, and in a whisper informed him of my situation, which prevented his asking me any questions. He tarried some time, and while he sat, he seemed deeply to meditate upon the uncertainty of my recovering. In the meantime, he showed a great desire to have conversation with me respecting my dying. As he thus sat pondering, I fancied to myself that he was going to ask me if I was prepared to die, and I dreaded to have him speak to me, for then I did not consider myself ready for such an awful event, inasmuch as I knew not the ways of Christ. Besides, there appeared to be a dark and lonesome chasm between myself and the Savior, which I dared not attempt to pass. I thought I strained my eyes, and by doing so I could discern a faint glimmer of the light that was beyond the gloom which lay immediately before me. While I was meditating upon death in this manner, my visitor left, soon after which my husband came to my bed and took me by the hand and said, "Oh, Lucy, my wife, you must die. The doctors have given you up, and all say you cannot live." I then looked to the Lord and begged and pleaded with him to spare my life, in order that I might bring up my children and be a comfort to my husband. My mind was much agitated during the whole night. Sometimes I contemplated heaven and heavenly things. Then my thoughts would turn upon those of earth, my babes, and my companion. During this night I made a solemn covenant with God that if he would let me live, I would endeavor to serve him according to the best of my abilities. Shortly after this, I heard a voice say to me, "Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Let your heart be comforted. Ye believe in God, believe also in me." In a few moments my mother came in, and looking upon me, she said, "Lucy, you are better." I replied, as my speech returned just at that instant, "Yes, mother, the Lord will let me live if I am faithful to the promise which I made to him, to be a comfort to my mother, my husband, and my children." I continued to gain strength until I became quite well as to my bodily health, but my mind was considerably disquieted. It was wholly occupied upon the subject of religion. As soon as I was able, I made all diligence in endeavoring to find someone who was capable of instructing me more perfectly in the way of life and salvation. As soon as I had strength sufficient, I visited one Deacon Davies, a man whom I regarded as exceedingly pious, and as he was apprised of my sudden and miraculous recovery, I expected to hear about the same which I had heard from my mother. "The Lord has done a marvelous work. Let his name have the praise thereof." But no. From the time I arrived at his house until I left, I heard nothing except, "Oh, Mrs. Smith has come. Help her in. Run, build a fire, make the room warm, fill the tea kettle, get the great armchair," etc., etc. Their excessive anxiety concerning my physical convenience and comfort, without being seasoned with one word in relation to Christ or godliness, sickened and disgusted me, and I returned home very sorrowful and much disappointed. From my anxiety of mind to abide the covenant which I had made with the Lord, I went from place to place for the purpose of getting information and finding, if it were possible, some congenial spirit who could enter into my feelings, and thus be able to strengthen and assist me in carrying out my resolutions. I heard that a very devout man was to preach the next Sabbath in the Presbyterian church. I therefore went to meeting in the full expectation of hearing that which my soul desired, the word of life. When the minister commenced speaking, I fixed my mind with deep attention upon the spirit and matter of his discourse. But after hearing him through, I returned home convinced that he neither understood nor appreciated the subject upon which he spoke. And I said in my heart that there was not then upon earth the religion which I sought. I therefore determined to examine my Bible, and, taking Jesus and his disciples for my guide, to endeavor to obtain from God that which man could neither give nor take away. Notwithstanding this, I would hear all that could be said, as well as read much that was written, on the subject of religion, but the Bible I intended should be my guide to life and salvation. This course I pursued a number of years. At length, I considered it my duty to be baptized, and, finding a minister who was willing to baptize me and leave me free in regard to joining any religious denomination, I stepped forward and yielded obedience to this ordinance, after which I continued to read the Bible as formerly, until my eldest son had attained his 22nd year.